Healthcare in America has always been a hot topic, and recent events, like the passing of UnitedHealthcare's CEO, have reignited conversations about the system's future. Adding to the mix is the ongoing confusion surrounding Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, two names for the same reform that many still don't realize are identical. Some even voted for Donald Trump thinking he supported the Affordable Care Act while opposing Obamacare.
You know, one good thing that came out of this whole Luigi UnitedHealthcare issue is people are finally starting to talk about the healthcare system in America and how messed up it is. What I don't think people realize is a lot of their issues is because of Obamacare. Yes, Obamacare had a lot of good ideas, but it didn't work for the vast majority of Americans. What it allowed was for people with pre-existing conditions who used to not be able to get health insurance, and people who couldn't afford health insurance at the time to be able to get health insurance, which is awesome. However, because of that, the insurance companies had to raise their premiums for all of the other people outside of those two circumstances. So if you didn't meet the eligibility financially for Obamacare, and if you didn't have pre-existing conditions, your insurance rate skyrocketed through the roof. That's the part of Obamacare that people don't talk about, because when you hear Obamacare, you hear about the Affordable Care Act, and it made health insurance affordable. Only made health insurance affordable for people who couldn't afford health insurance to begin with. For the people who did have insurance already, it just made them skyrocket. So the majority of middle-class Americans are paying for that.
Serious question for the Republicans who didn't know that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare were the same thing. What was the thought process there? Did you think that you had the Affordable Care Act because it was for Republicans and Obamacare was for the Democrats? Did you think that Obama was still helping with Obamacare? Like, did you think Obama was running it? What did you think the main difference was between Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act? Like, did you just think, like, Obamacare was the more liberal insurance and you just got, like, the more non-liberal insurance? I'm not even trying to be mean. I'm genuinely so fascinated by this blunder. I could understand not getting tariffs, sure. I'm just... If we didn't think they were the same thing, what did we think they were? How did we think they were different? Like, when you got your Affordable Care Act coverage, did you specifically say, no Obamacare for me, only Affordable Care Act? Did you think that Trump was going to take away the free Obamacare insurance for Democrats, but not the Affordable Care Act insurance for Republicans? I'm genuinely trying to understand. So please leave me a comment. And for what it's worth, I genuinely hope that everyone who needs free health insurance or low-cost health insurance ends up with it at the end of this.
Dear President Trump, I know I don't look so good. I've been undergoing chemotherapy since May, and it takes a lot out of you. The good news is that Obamacare is keeping me alive and can cure my stage 4 cancer, but I need to keep my insurance. Your latest plan will put me and millions of other Americans at risk. Throwing us to the mercy of the insurance companies is not the way to go. We need the protections of the Affordable Care Act so that people with pre-existing conditions will be covered. We need somebody that will stand up for us rather than selling us out.
You know, it's kind of astonishing how in the year of our Lord 2024, going on to 2025 now, there are people walking around today, U.S. citizens, who do not know that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare are one and the same. What's worse is that they are actively taking part in and benefiting from the Affordable Care Act and then trashing Obamacare every chance they get simply because that man's name is attached to it. You see, you can't underestimate stupid. It always finds a way. Now, I could understand if this confusion was happening when, the Affordable Care Act was first introduced, right? But we coming up on at least 10 years. I think it's been 10 years, in fact, right? And there are still people, most of them in MAGA mob, who don't know that my man Barry, the 44th president, got them affordable health care. I've been on Obamacare before. It's great. It's great. Cheapest health insurance I ever got. And they actively trashing it because there's nothing but air up here. It's crazy. I'll never forget, I used to work at the Best Buy in the Geek Squad. I was a computer technician. And I had this one coworker, white shorty. She was kind of fat, not gonna lie. Anyway, she was from Maine. Super awkward, introverted, nerdy little white girl, bro. And this was around the time where Trump was either campaigning or he was already in office, right? And me and her, we never had no problem. She was sweet, you know, no issues whatsoever, right? But then, you know, she's from Maine, and I was like, you're probably one of them ones, bro. Like, I'm gonna be careful around you. And sure enough, I just happened to be talking about how I had to get on Obamacare because I turned 26. I had to get off my mom's insurance. And she was just like, I mean, good for you, but I mean, it really sucks that, you know, taxpayers are being forced to da-da-da-da. You know, the usual dribble, talking about how, you know, taxpayers got to pay for that and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. And then I just so happened to ask her, like, what are you on? She's like, oh, I'm on ACA. I just looked at her like she was stupid. And then she's like, what? I'm like, you do know the Affordable Care Act is Obamacare. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, yes, it is. She's just like, no, they're different. And I was just looking at her like, this bitch fucking stupid. Ultimately, I let it go because it's not my job to challenge stupid where it stands. You just gotta let somebody else handle that. But it just goes to show that some people just no brains up here.
If you are worried about losing your health care under the Trump administration, open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act is happening right now, and you can enroll into January. The Affordable Care Act is so well put together that it would take Trump and his administration a while to dismantle it, if they even could. But if that's something you are worried about, I would recommend enrolling now.
Real quick, my team, I'm going to try to explain this delicately because we have brains, so this is going to be extremely hard to get. Imagine taking an open book exam and still failing it. No, because this is for you. Imagine taking an open book exam and still failing it. Now imagine you had years to study for said exam, and yet you still failed it. Imagine that for a second.
I'm seeing a ton of videos about people who didn't know that Obamacare is the Affordable Care Act, and as a health insurance expert, I have to tell you, this has been a thing for close to 15 years now. I have been explaining that Obamacare is the Affordable Care Act for so long that absolutely none of this shocks me. Health insurance is already super duper complicated and really hard to read and understand. But then when you have right-wing media changing up the words associated with insurance, it just confuses everybody. You've got deductibles, you've got co-insurance, you've got out-of-pocket, you've got your premium, you've got a million things going on with your health insurance. Get to understand health insurance and know your rights, because things are about to change.
I don't want a bristled exfoliating mouth stick. I want a toothbrush. I don't wear tennis shoes. I wear sneakers. I don't use cotton swabs. I use a soft, short wand of fibers. This isn't decomposed organic material. This is compost.
Please stop and listen to this if it concerns you, because I know I need a lot of help and other people do as well. So when the ACA gets repealed, what can we do? Right? Like, I know TikTok is a great place for education and resources, so please stitch this or leave a comment or something on what we can do if the ACA gets repealed. There are so many of us that rely on the ACA, not just for quality of life, but just to live, period, right? Like, one of the medicines I take is $300,000 a year. One. Right? And if insurances no longer have to accept people with pre-existing conditions, it's like, all I could think to do is leave and go somewhere. And I was doing research, like Portugal and France have universal health care, and they also allow people with pre-existing conditions on there. So maybe that's an option, but I know moving isn't an option for most people, especially disabled people. But I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I could, but I feel like it's like a last resort situation. I don't know what to do. So please, stitch this with some type of advice or education or something on what to do. Because I'm lost. I know a lot of other people are too.
I don't use headphones. I use a headband of speakers for my ears. This is not canned food. This is an aluminum cylinder that holds edible ingredients. I don't want bathroom tissue. I want toilet paper. I don't want a spoon. I want a curved utensil for scooping.
This post has blown up on the Bird app because a lot of people don't realize that the Affordable Care Act is the reason that a lot of young people can stay on their parents' health insurance until they're 26 years old. And if you didn't know, as of March 23rd, the Affordable Care Act was passed 14 years ago in 2010. And as a health economist, I'm here to tell you why the Affordable Care Act is one of the most monumental pieces of healthcare legislation over the last 50 years. It did a lot. In fact, from 2010 to 2016, the number of uninsured people was cut in half. 20 to 24 million more Americans now have health insurance because of the Affordable Care Act. A lot of this increase in coverage had to do with something called Medicaid expansion. In 2014, the federal government offered to increase its contribution of federal match rates if states offered to cover people who made up to 138% of the poverty. As of December 2023, 41 states and the District of Columbia have expanded Medicaid coverage. There have been upwards of 600 economic and public health studies looking at the impacts of those states that expanded Medicaid versus those that didn't. Have come to a consensus that Medicaid expansion has improved health insurance coverage, increased the number of visits, improved health outcomes, and improved the affordability of healthcare services across the board. It's been instrumentally effective. The Affordable Care Act also prevented insurers from denying coverage with those with pre-existing conditions. Essentially, why health insurance companies did this is because people with pre-existing conditions are more expensive to cover because they need additional healthcare services. The definition of a pre-existing condition is pretty large. Things like anxiety and depression were considered pre-existing conditions. Health insurance providers could deny you coverage because of those diagnoses. The Affordable Care Act also mandated that all insurance companies must provide essential health benefits as well as preventative care and screenings for women. This has changed because of certain Supreme Court cases, but in general, things like birth control and pap smears, those are all covered by the Affordable Care Act. Insurance must cover these essential health benefits in some way. Before the Affordable Care Act, they were not mandated to do so. The bill also established the Affordable Care Act exchanges, which provided affordable self-coverage. The provisions of this bill have also been changed because of Supreme Court cases, which I'm happy to talk about. And also, this bill isn't perfect. There's actually a lot of things this bill was supposed to do, but because of senators like Joe Lieberman, it did not happen. All things considered, the Affordable Care Act has been an instrumental first step in greatly expanding healthcare coverage. If you have any questions, let me know.
Big news coming from Ambetter, which is one of the largest insurance carriers in the Affordable Care Act marketplace space. An email was just sent to all of the brokers in the United States, and it says we are seeing an increase in member enrollment complaints stemming from misleading advertisements and lack of communication from the broker making the enrollment. In some cases, these members have been unable to obtain services like surgeries or incurred administrative issues with premium payments, claims, and access to in-network providers. Here are some examples of the deceptive advertisements that they have become aware of. 1, online ads placed by a lead generation company asking the member to simply check a box and provide information to enroll in the best no-cost plan without ever speaking to a broker. Do not click on that ad. That is not the way you want to handle your health insurance. Number 2, ads offering government allowances up to $1,400 a month for healthcare and everyday needs. That does not exist. Please do not click on that ad. It is clickbait. 3, ads offering $500 gift cards and free health insurance with the Ambetter logo. That is not compliant. These shady agents did not ask any permission from Ambetter to use that logo, because if they did, they knew it would be denied because this is not compliant. You guys, please do not click on any of these ads. Finally, these shady agents have been running these deceptive practices for over a year. I've seen it myself. I hear the things that they say. All they care about is commission. They do not care about you. If you want to find health insurance, you need to find a broker that's going to explain how the Affordable Care Act works, explain copays, deductibles, co-insurance, in-network providers, etc., and has your best interest in mind. Just wanted to let you know this is happening. I expect to see more from the insurance companies. This is a good thing. We're going to help protect you. Have a good day.
So we just got some really big numbers, and of course I had to come and run to TikTok to share with you guys. You know that you'd be the first ones to know, of course. So it just turns out that we have now covered more than 20 million people because of the Affordable Care Act. That's amazing, right? Like, just to think, all those years ago when President Obama signed it into law, everything that has happened, all of the attempts to try to repeal it, the courage of folks like John McCain to try to save the Affordable Care Act, everyone who lost their seats because of it, it is so inspiring to now see that it's 100% working. It's working all these years, and the reforms we're making to expand its access to more people is continuing to get people access to healthcare. It's a big win, and it's a part of the reason why 2024 is so important. Healthcare is on the ballot. We have to expand the Affordable Care Act. It is doing great work. We have to make sure it keeps on rolling.